Hello, everyone. This is Shaun Ellis. We are back with another elite conversation. So, what I have in front of you is Dr. Chris Mckenzie. He wrote the book Unleash Your Velocity, correct?
Unleash your pitching velocity.
Unleash Your Pitching Velocity. All right. So, I worked with Chris Mckenzie back in 2018, where I was basically on the back end of my career, and I was looking at ways of helping me sustain my velocity deeper into the season, because I was the kind of guy where I blossomed really fast and then I started to die off at the end. So he made some really good observations, and we went through some pretty informative testing where I started to see weaker hips on one side, tighter hamstring on the other side, and these things really helped my career because I was able to sustain my velocity from inning one to I believe I went 45 innings that year. So
That's awesome.
welcome, Chris. How you doing?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Very good. My pleasure. So what was your purpose on writing this book?
Yeah. The purpose was, um, as a physical therapist, I often see kids when it's too late. And I often see them when injury has already struck. And being a prior athlete myself, um, I was a track and field athlete, so I wasn't kind of in the baseball realm. I stopped playing baseball when I was a lot younger, but I was injured and I was mismanaged by my athletic trainer, or
Hmm.
not. I'll say not mismanaged, but not completely managed. And my mom and dad didn't know what was up. They didn't know how to train me. My coaches didn't know how to train me. They knew how to coach. You
They just coach.
know, they just coach, right? And so it took me going through a few injuries, a few of the same injuries, and then finally going to physical therapy school and learning like, oh, like I wasn't managed the right way. Like somebody was like completely missing the boat with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if they would have found this, I would have been able to rehab for my injury and have it not recur. And two, what if there was a way to like do some sort of like pre-participation, like pre-sport examination, and know like what you're weak at, and
Hmm.
know where your inflexibilities are and how that could impact you in your sport as far as injury and performance.
Yeah.
Like what, wouldn't that be great if something like that existed?
Yeah. And
And there are some things now, and so I wrote my book because I don't want anyone to fall into my position where I was a junior in high school. I had a really good run. I went to states, and then like my senior year, I had big schools that were looking at me, and then I got injured, and then I couldn't compete really the rest of the year, and like all those big name schools just looked the other way. And so that sucked. And so I wrote the book so I can kind of I want to help prevent people from being in the same spot that I was in.
now, would you say pitching, you were the most susceptible to injury in baseball and also in sports, just because throwing is a violent, task?
Yeah, yeah. Throwing a baseball is the fastest motion in sports. I'm not even going to quote the exact speed because I honestly I can't remember it right now off the top of my head, but it is the fastest motion in sports. And so there's so much stress that happens on the throwing arm. Now, the throwing arm is like the caboose of
Yeah.
a train. It's just kind of along for the ride. There's so many other parts of the body. It starts from the ground up. Like that's the engine.
Hmm.
And so then you got to get the engine moving to give everything else momentum, and then have proper tension throughout your whole body to be able to release the ball and throw with you know good velocity.
Yeah. I would say that that's one of the main principles I cover with my training, is saying, the very last thing you do in your mechanics is the throw itself. So you're generating your force and energy, from the ground up. Just because your first move is either a pivot or you're picking your leg up, that's where the party starts. Not as I'm throwing, let me try to work a little bit harder, even though I didn't properly use my legs or the rotation or something like that.
Right, exactly. There's so much hype on, like, well, one, arm care programs, right?
Yeah.
Like arm care, right? And like, and so like these arm care programs, they focus on the arm only,
Yeah.
and like they rely on like, strength conditioning guys to work on the rest of the body. Um, but like if you're doing an arm care program and you're focusing on just the arm, like again, you're worrying about the caboose instead of the engine for the train. Like arm care is actually like whole body care. In order to take care of your arm, you have to take care of the rest of your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause
You know,
you're going to have deficiency somewhere.
exactly. Right. Right. And so those deficiencies kind of add up. Like this little hitch in this body part, you know, puts more stress on the next body part that is required of it for the throw, you know, and then like that gets overloaded and the next link in the chain gets overloaded. And then all of a sudden you're left with like, oh, I've got soreness in my arm that I can't every time after I throw, like what's going on?
It's probably from your Achilles.
Yeah. Right.
You haven't been stretching it properly. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So with, sorry to cut you off, with optimizing your warm up, how in depth should a warm up be for, let's say, a 13-year-old compared to a 17-year-old compared to a collegiate pro athlete? Like, should it vary, or should we still have the same, you know, program for the rest of our lives just because we want to warm everything up before we pick up a baseball?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, right? And there have not been any studies out there of like how a youth should warm up compared to professional, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and comparing it. But one thing's for sure is you you know, to do a proper warm up for your unique body, you need to have a unique examination on your body to find out where your limitations are. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have things that are tight, I like to say if you have known or assessed areas of tightness, like those are areas that you should stretch. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's probably a lot of different types of stretching, but one of the most common ones is called like a static stretch, and that's what I tell people and um, moms and dads is like that's that old school like bend over, touch your toes, try to stretch your hamstrings, right? Which is a
Yeah.
terrible way to stretch your hamstrings, but that's an example of like a static stretch, like a long hold where you
Yeah.
hold for like 30 seconds or so. Um, and of course, in the PT world, in the FA training world, like if 30 seconds is good, we think, all right, let's do it 3 times.
Yeah.
Let's just kill it, you know? But uh, if you have known or assessed areas of tightness, you should stretch those areas as part of a warm up. And then you never want to end your warm up with a static stretch. So there's plenty of evidence out there that says like those longer hold stretches, they reduce the force output of your muscle, meaning like they actually make your muscles weaker and less explosive.
Okay.
That only lasts for a short period of time, maybe like half an hour to an hour or so. But
Mm-hmm.
like you can speed that up. So if you have known areas of tightness, you stretch them, and then you follow that up with a more dynamic warm up. So that's like arm swings,
Interesting.
arms circles, leg swings, like maybe walking lunges or like, you know, little side to side kinds of things that you do.
Speed skaters.
Karaoke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I don't even know the names now of like everything that you can do, right? There's you know more than me. But yeah, so like so everybody, and so it's going to vary probably from the youth to the more mature athlete. So youth players generally, um, you know, they haven't hit puberty yet, so they're not getting very tight
Yeah.
yet, and they're more loosey goosey. So like they probably don't have to do any more static stretching. You know, they probably don't have. If I'm going to generalize this, they probably don't have much tightness that they have to work on, but they probably have they should probably jump right into a dynamic warm up,
Okay.
and then work and then jump into throwing as well. So you want to do like warm up your body and then warm up throwing. Don't just jump right into throwing. Like you can still, you know, like you want to follow this. It's a warm up, right? So you start slow and then you speed up. And
Yeah. Well, you know, it's
so
funny, like doing training on like the city fields in Philadelphia, I see a lot of teams, especially the younger guys, they'll play catch and then they'll stretch. And it's like, I
yeah.
wouldn't say universal, but it's definitely a Philadelphia thing where guys throw and then they go into the stretch routine. And I'm like, wow, that is a cool concept. I should try that one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
arm would fall all the way off.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's a little backwards, you know? And so that's like, I would call myself like an outsider
Mhm.
in the baseball world. Like, I played baseball till middle school, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna run track and field. I have a lot of speed. And but I haven't been in the game long enough that where I would say, well, this is how we've always done it. And so
Mhm.
this is how we're going to continue to do it. My coach said this works best. So we're just going to stick to it. We're not going to we're not going to take in any evidence, and we're just going to continue to do it like this. So yeah, there are better ways to warm up than what you just mentioned.
Okay, so we're in the world of weighted balls and analytics, and we're going in that direction, right?
Mhm.
How bad are weighted balls for your arm? I remember reading something in your book, or maybe you mentioned it to me about saying that it expedites your range of motion too fast, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, of the study that Mike Reinold up in Boston did a few years ago, and I mentioned that study in my book. Um, I can't remember the amount of athletes that were in the study, maybe like 16, I think.
Mhm.
And a quarter of them, so 25% of them, well, all of them went through a weighted ball program. So there was a group that did nothing. There was a group that did a strength and conditioning program, and then there was a group that did a weighted ball program.
Mhm.
And so they measured all kinds of variables on them, like strength and range of motion and other types of flexibility, and then finally like how hard they could throw.
Mhm.
And 25%, so four people, if it was indeed 16 athletes, four people ended up with like having to undergo season ending injuries that were in the weighted ball group.
Okay.
And not everybody in the weighted ball group increased their velocity. And there's guys that increase velocity in the strength and conditioning group, and that's all that they did.
Okay. So
So,
what if you said that that was a formal warm up? So what I
mm,
did probably for the last year or so is we would do a training, segment called rocker holds, where you're going through your delivery and you're holding onto the ball. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a tennis player and a pitcher has the same, motion with the arm, but their shoulders are significantly stronger because they don't release and we do.
right. So the thought behind that is that the tennis player, um, since they're holding on to the racket, they're decelerating their arm more. So
Okay.
your arm muscles, your muscles in your shoulder, specifically your external rotator muscles at your shoulder, they're becoming stronger because you're actually holding on to the implement.
Okay.
So weighted ball wise, though, it looks like the problem may occur in the layback phase
Okay. So this way.
of that throw. Yeah. So
Okay.
that external rotation, right back.
Mhm.
And so all those guys that got injured in that study had a significant gain of external rotation motion. I think it was a gain of like 10 degrees of motion of external rotation from when they started. And the weighted ball program was just like a general one that you would buy off the shelf, that you would find online.
Yeah.
Um, and so 25% of those guys got injured. Now, I'm not saying that weighted balls are bad. I think in my book I reference like use weighted balls if you are mature, like if you have a mature skeletal structure. So like somebody like yourself, maybe towards the end of high school.
Oh yeah.
Boom,
Oh no. Oh
boom,
god. I
baby.
was like 170 in high school. No shot.
Okay.
Maybe first year of college.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I usually what I tell everybody, I say get an examination. It doesn't have to be from me, but
Mhm.
get an examination on your body. Find out what those weak areas are. Like if you're not happy with your performance, like look at your body first, fix those areas. For like, you don't want to. The last thing you want to do is pour gas on a fire, right?
Mhm.
So if the fire was bad, and like we'll say like a loss of motion at your shoulder is a fire, right? Um, meaning like it's bad. You don't want to have lost motion at your shoulder. And I can kind of explain that more. But if you pour gas on that fire, right? If you throw more performance and more stress onto
Mm-hmm.
that problem, like that problem is going to get worse.
Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of people do with these weighted ball programs, especially if it's in like a, you know, a group kind of setting. These guys haven't had any work on their bodies. They're just there to learn how to pitch, learn how to throw. And
Chuck
the
it.
coach is like, we're gonna throw this ball as hard as you can. Underweight ball, overweight ball, throw as hard as you can against that tarp. And you know what? We're gonna run into it as well.
Oh God. So is it weird that I always threw slower with
With the
like a
run.
crow hop than from stationary to pitch?
Yeah, you know, it's
I
just
can
like
never figure that out.
your body just might not have learned how to like program that. Like you know, like you're like you weren't good at putting that together
Oh yeah,
for
my
some
body's
reason.
like, why are you running so fast? Slow down. Like
Yeah, your body's
you don't
saying,
even throw
hold
this
up.
hard. Like just go A to B and
Yeah.
conserve some energy. So it's great that you said that using the tennis racket is beneficial with the throw because you're not letting go. So I started applying that and also throwing a football in my
Mm-hmm.
training. So the goal is for me as a trainer, as a coach, for these kids to maximize their reps with creating their technique and form and timing without
Yeah.
letting go of a baseball for an hour straight if we do an hour lesson,
Good.
of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
is there benefits to throwing a football, or is it just helps because it's not a baseball weight or you're throwing it differently?
Yeah. You know, I mean, the throw is slightly different. The football is heavier, so it's kind of like a heavier ball. And so in general, it's thought of that the speed of the motion is the problem. So heavy ball training might increase your external rotation too quickly, which we know is bad,
Mhm.
but it's maybe the lighter balls or even the baseball itself that when throwing that ball, now your arm is moving faster
Yeah.
than the heavy ball. So it's not only the range of motion gain, it's probably the range of motion gain and the speed at which your arm is moving in that new range of motion gain, which puts so much stress on the inside of your elbow. So, I do like weighted ball, holds like what you're performing.
Mhm.
And I think that's great because I think as that's that's one part that I think a lot of trainers, maybe even a lot of PTs are missing is like the rotator cuff for the baseball player. It's a eccentric motion. It's eccentrically working, which means it's actually working to slow your arm down as
Okay.
you're throwing the ball. Okay,
Okay.
you're like eccentric. What is that? Is it different? Yeah. Um, so those muscles, like as soon as your arm passes your ear, so like how am I
Yeah.
getting there?
When you're
From
coming back
yeah,
to
like
go forward.
yeah. Those external rotators, so the muscles, the backside rotator cuff muscles, those muscles, they work to slow down your arm. And a lot of people think that's counterintuitive. I think it's becoming more popular now, or more known now, that those muscles kind of work to slow your arm down. But as your shoulder is slowing down, your elbow is rapidly speeding up. And so that's the kinetic chain, right? Like the 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 body part that starts it off uses a lot of force, a lot of power, creates a lot of tension, and then it has to slow down after it passes all that force and velocity and momentum on to the next body segment.
Uh-huh.
So that rotator cuff, those muscles have to slow down, and so those muscles respond best for a throw if they're trained in that way. And so it's a little bit more haphazard to let the ball go. It's a little bit more wild. So I like the idea of holding on to the ball and kind of, learn the throw like that.
Okay.
Um, there's also a good product out there for people that are trying to rehab from an injury. I put it in my book. It's called the Velocon. It's by a local guy out of Norristown, Frank. I'm totally blanking on his last name right now. Awesome guy though. And it's a tool that kind of helps you learn like the proper ways to throw using your body, but not using your arm. So it's
Okay.
cool. Look up Velocon. trainer.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, we'll look it up. All right. So a couple more questions going to the last.
Mhm.
Throwing a breaking ball. How bad is that on your arm compared to just throwing incorrectly, period? Let's say if you did a study of a guy that threw, sliders at 14 years old, sorry, and a kid that was a pitcher at 14 years old, but he had bad mechanics, which one of these guys are more likely to get injured?
Mhm. And that's a tough question. So like the evidence would point to that breaking pitches and curveballs, they are less stressful on the arm than a fastball.
Oh, okay.
But um, like you said, looking at a younger athlete, and they were known to throw a slider since they were 14, are they actually throwing a slider? You know? So it's like, are they actually throwing the pitch that they said they were?
Yeah.
Are guys actually throwing curveballs in the studies? These young athletes. You know,
Yeah.
so they say they, and a lot of this is like it's just pretty much asking the athlete, did you throw curveballs? And like maybe they tried, but maybe they really didn't succeed. The
Yeah.
ball never curved, or and so maybe it was just like a fastball or whatnot. But so like it's hard to look at these studies with 100% accuracy. But so the general rule is it probably makes more sense to wait to throw breaking pitches until usually it's like until you hit puberty, so like until you can grow some hair on your face.
Oh
Just
God.
in
So I was like 19.
Oh my
First curveball at 19.
just, I mean, that's a general guideline. Like
Okay.
you can go through puberty and still not be able to grow hair on your face.
Oh yeah.
But
Got it.
there's other indicators of it, right?
Uh-huh.
So but the general rule, and I do like to follow it, is like, work on your location, work on how good of a pitch that you can become with your fastball. Be able to hit your spots, and then start to add in these other pitches, these like the breaking ones.
Yeah. So they're
um
they're hurdling just to get to a certain pitch rather than perfect the number one first.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And but like I get the competitive environment out there. Like these kids are competing at like 12 years old,
Yeah.
13 years old, and they're trying to throw all these off speed pitches because not many people at that age can, or they're learning it. But and so if someone can perfect that, or if someone can learn how to do that at a young age, they're probably going to be able to get a lot of guys out. But at the end of the day, they're vying for plastic trophies at that age, which means
Means
not a whole
nothing.
lot. It means
Yeah.
nothing, right? So
Yeah.
like work on your development as a player, as a pitcher, and then responsibly start to add in those breaking pitches. That's what I would say. So I can't really confidently say that, the studies out there point that the fastball is more stressful on the shoulder and the elbow than breaking pitches, but we don't really know because we're going off of a report from a 13-year-old that maybe threw a curveball, you know.
Okay. Or probably
So
too many.
yeah, right, right.
So kids, if you're out there listening, knuckleballs and changeups. That's the way to go. Less stress on the arm. All right. So about your book, of all the people that purchase, hopefully, hundreds of thousands going into the billions, right?
Let's do it, baby. Let's do
What
it.
would you
Yeah.
what would you say is like the biggest piece of information that people really love out of that book? Hopefully, what page was I on? Like 39 or 37 with
Oh
the
yeah,
Formula
yeah.
One
The best
reference.
page. Yeah, yeah. Shaun is in the book, um, and he's got great form.
Yep.
He's got his rear leg, his trail leg, like decelerating the rest of his body. And the example that I use is like a Formula One car. Like when they're in an accident, um, they they break apart. they're supposed to, and that dissipates force away from the driver. So like the wheels go flying and everything else like that, but it keeps the driver safe. It dissipates all that energy outward. And that's kind of what your trail leg does when it comes around. It kind of helps to slow down your body and take stress away from other parts
Okay.
of your body. Yeah. So that's the most important part of the book.
All right. Is there going to be part 2 of this book? Or is there going to be like a catching velocity and a right field velocity? Or is there going to be part 2 pitching velocity, 2K20 edition?
Well,
quarantine edition.
We're still trying to get word out about all of the great things that are in this book right now. So I'm not even, there's thought of like doing this, for softball as well. Like a throw is a throw is a throw. Softball pitchers have it's a completely different animal. It kind of uses a lot of the same muscles, actually, but it's a different animal. But like an overhand throw is an overhand throw, no matter if you're in right field, left field, you play softball in the outfield or infield, catcher. So like it's titled Unleash Your Pitching Velocity because pitchers most notably have more problems. And so I wanted to impact them. But like this book, the information that's in the book, it can be used if you play right field, if you play left field, if you play shortstop, third base. It's all the same stuff, and it's not just like, it's not a conservative like injury prevention book. It's let's find your weaknesses in the book, and the book kind of walks you through. It walks a mom or dad through. It walks a coach through, like how to do my examination on their own kids, so that one, it gives them knowledge of like, oh, this is everything that goes into a throw, and I can look at this on my son or my daughter, and I can do this exam. I can find out if something's tight or weak, and if it is, I can address it. There's steps in the book to address it. So,
wow.
The whole goal with the book is to like spread this knowledge, and put people in a better position than I was in. That's the ultimate goal. So, but yeah, so if people want to pick up a copy of the book, oh man, I want to make sure I get the website right, because we did it.
No, that should
Hold
be on
on,
the screen.
Shaun.
Oh no,
should be on the screen. All right, I got to swipe away here. Am I
okay.
still on your screen?
No, just your name.
Just my name. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So I just because we trimmed up. Let's see. We trimmed up the. Where is this? Come on. You'd think I would know what this is, right?
It's like when your dog ate your homework.
I have a marketing guy that like, this is what he does, right? He's awesome at it. So
he makes a fancy website that you forget the name of.
Well, it's either unleashpitchingvelocity.com or unleash your pitching velocity. I think it's unleashpitchingvelocity.com. I think the your was just like.
Well, do you have so I'm going to I'll put the links below, but what's your Instagram? And I'm sure they'll have a link to your pages from there.
Let's see, Instagram. So Twitter is probably much better.
Okay.
That's where I have my primary handle. My Instagram is more my office. And that's kind of, we put out different content for that. But my Twitter handle is Dr. Chris Mckenzie. So DrChris, and then Mckenzie, Mckenzie. So this is, yeah, here it is. It's unleashpitchingvelocity.com.
Okay. All right. I'll put that below.
Unleashpitchingvelocity.com. All right. I'm coming back. Hopefully you can see me.
There we go. That's a lot better.
All right. Perfect. All right. Yeah.
So I think it's great because you have to acknowledge that we only get so many hours in a day. And our job is to influence not just tens, but ultimately, as many as we can, whatever that number is. So
Right.
how do we do that? The power of the internet, obviously, working out in person, but publishing a book is also going to help people as well, because if you're too far or if the schedules don't sync up, this is a great way for them to, build a better you, I always say.
Right.
So
Right.
we want to thank you for putting this out, because I don't think a lot of people would. I think people would probably put enough to where they say, all right, for the rest, you got to come in person and do a full exam. But you were, you were grateful enough to give us this information without us actually having to, come into your office and steal your chocolates or your mints, whatever you have in the front. So that's pretty much it. Like I said,
Thank
the
you.
point of these conversations are to show the world of baseball, and not just, fastballs and sliders or arm care, but the PT world, the world of a player going through the recruitment process, the world of a coach, the world of a recruiter, obviously my world being a trainer now, prior to being a player for that long. We want to show everyone what it's like, with the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think this is, I think your show is a great idea, and I applaud you for starting it. I'm gonna encourage you to keep it up. I had a podcast at one time that I did like 14 or 16 episodes, and it slowly began to fizzle because it was hard to schedule everything. So like,
Yeah.
I applaud you, man. Like, keep going, keep doing it, and let me know how I can support you.
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely. We're gonna
yeah,
have to get you in person. You're gonna have to be right
right
here.
there.
No more baseball pillows. So
We were, yeah,
whenever we go back to yellow,
yeah, exactly.
we need you to come back, because we're gonna have two more segments. One is gonna be 20 questions. All right,
Okay,
rapid fire,
okay,
and
all
then
right.
the last one is gonna be your hot takes. All right,
Ooh,
because we got to get into, with Roethlisberger going down with Tommy John. Is that going to be a new thing with football, because a lot of guys are in the pocket throwing, so things like that are going to, they're going to mesh, and we're going to have some good conversations. But I want to thank you again. Is there anything else you have for the audience? The millions that are
um,
watching, right?
yeah. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you pick up a copy of the book, unleashpitchingvelocity.com. It's, yeah, it's information that I'm trying to spread. And if it's not for you for some reason, if you're hearing this and you're like, well, maybe I couldn't use it, but someone else can, forward them the link to the show, because they're going to want to get on this show. So Shaun, I just want to say thank you so much. And I love what you're doing, and I'm glad that we're local. So
Absolutely, sir.
yeah.
I'll talk to you later. Thank you for your time.
All right, brother.
Hey,
We'll see you.
everyone, make sure you check out the link. All right. Have a good night.